It is a great honor to have the Secretary of the Department of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, to join us for a few minutes to talk about some of the latest projects going on in the trucking industry. And, sir, it's a great honor to have you back on the radio. Good afternoon. How are you today?
Well, thank you. It's always good to be with you. Thanks for having me on again.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. I know you've been very busy traveling to the great state of Colorado, talking about what's going on as far as the I-70 corridor is concerned. It looks like some major improvements are going to be heading that direction. Talk about that, and welcome back to the show.
That's right. You look at I-70 and you see safety issues, environmental issues, certainly economic issues. I thought it was a good place to remind people that the supply chain concerns that we have is not just about what's happening at the ports, as important as they are. It's making sure every part of the U.S. is connected. Now, if you've driven I-70, you know that it's a single point of failure for a very important stretch and a very big stretch of American roadway because it runs through a canyon and there's really nowhere else to go. So it's very important that road be in good shape. Now we're up in Floyd Hill, where there's a vision for making improvements that will make it safer, that will help deal with some of these backups that have affected tourists and truckers alike. Then we went down into Glenwood Canyon, where there was a mudslide, a major debris flow last year that effectively shut down that entire stretch of highway. And they were able to clear it with a remarkable effort, and are now looking at how to make sure that it is protected for the future. When you're standing there, you get a real sense of how vulnerable pieces of our infrastructure are. And this is exactly why we're starting to use the word resilience more and more in our funding, in our policy, and our decisions, making our roadways, our interstate highway systems, our bridges, tunnels, and more resilient, because we know that there are going to be more floods and fires and droughts and mudslides. We got to be ready for that.
Mr. Secretary, talk about the money that's going to be allocated for this. This is going to be coming from the Federal Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, correct in that? Talk about that, if you will.
That's right. When it comes to the area hit by that mudslide, we were able to unlock emergency relief dollars. Those are federal dollars through our highway administration that allows the state of Colorado to make those improvements and repairs without it coming out of their budget for the future. They have so many capital plans, and the governor and legislature there passed their own state law that is in many ways similar to the federal law that the president pushed, which is great. Whenever we have the state and the federal government pulling in the same direction, that really helps. Now, the president's bipartisan infrastructure law, we've put forward $52 billion this year alone just for the highway piece of that. And Colorado's going to see about $4 billion over the next 5 years in roads and bridges. Those dollars will also go to things like that resilience opportunity I was talking about earlier, shoring up our infrastructure, sometimes moving it. Look, if it's on a floodplain or if it's in an area that's going to get hit by a mudslide year after year, we got to take a hard look at what makes sense. They told me there in Glenwood Canyon area that they had 4 500-year floods of some form or another just in the last few years. And we got to ask ourselves, okay, if a 500-year flood isn't what it used to be, how do we make sure that we include that in the design and the funding of our highways for the future?
When you look at the overall implementation of the infrastructure law, I would imagine you're getting a lot of feedback from states, local constituency about the importance of the infrastructure law and what it's going to mean for states and individual communities all the way down through Main Street.
Oh, yeah, we're hearing about it everywhere we go. And, now that the dollars are starting to flow, we're seeing the communities and the states come up with their ideas on what to do with them. And, they're going to actually make the majority of the decisions. We set a standard. You can think of it as a kind of quality control. But most of these formula dollars, it's really up to the states to decide whether it's this road or that road, this bridge or that bridge. Now, we also have some competitive programs. That's discretionary funding that I can approve based on the applications that come in. And sometimes that can go right to a local community, a transit agency, a port authority, and looking forward to seeing the ideas that come in there, too, so that we can fund them. We've had these programs for years, but we've never had the level of funding, which means we get to say yes to projects that might not have made it before, even though they're good projects.
Let's talk about what's going on as far as the ports are concerned. A lot of money is going to be allocated for the port infrastructure grants, and there was also the release of a supply chain report on short and long-term funding needs. Talk about both of those, if you will.
Yeah, so we're putting out $450 million here for ports around the country. And just to give you an example of what we can use that for, last year we used that funding to do a $52 million project at the Port of Long Beach, which is going to add about 10,000 feet of track and help move rail track onto the port so you can get those containers moving more quickly. But a lot of the examples are smaller from around the country. And in my home state of Indiana, a little community called Tell City, right on the river across from Kentucky, got $1.6 million that's going to help them get a crane, a pier that'll support a crane that they can use to load cargo off of the barges and directly onto the trucks. So, you got large and small ports, large and small projects, and they're all part of this bigger supply chain, just like our trucking and warehousing system. And that's what this big supply chain report covers. The president's been focused on this from day one. So in February last year, he tasked several of the departments, including mine, with putting together this report with associated action plans within a year. Of course, we've been working all year on this, these actions, but the 1 year mark gave us a chance to put forward a whole set of recommendations, including, by the way, around the issue of truck parking, which I know is a very important issue in our supply chains. And a lot of people don't think about that much, although they may have noticed more and more truckers having to find parking wherever they can. This is a safety issue. It is an economic issue. It's even an environmental issue because you got so much idling going on where the parking isn't available. And that's just one of many, many things we've got to be doing that are included in this report.
When you look at the monies that are going to be allocated for all of these projects and the amount of jobs that are going to be created here, these job numbers could well total into the thousands. Correct in that? Talk about the job creation and the effects on local economy with these jobs that are being created.
Yeah, individual communities can see thousands of jobs created. The country, I think, will see millions of jobs, either directly or indirectly supported by this legislation. And this is every kind of job. It's architects and engineers for sure. It's the workers that are going to be laying the track on these railroad improvements. It's the electrical workers who are going to be installing these electric charging infrastructure pieces that are going in around the country. It's a lot of good union jobs, construction, building trade jobs that pay well, offer a pathway into the middle class. And then we're also supporting the jobs of the people who work in transportation right now, truck drivers, the people who work in ground crews and on aircraft in our aviation sector. All those longshore workers that we count on to get goods off of those boats and onto the roads and rails. This is maybe the biggest untold story of our supply chains, that it's human beings that make all of this work. I know that's not any news to your listeners, but something I think we got to remind ourselves about here in Washington and got to remind the country about, because people just expect things to get to where they need to be on time. Don't always think about the jobs, the workers, the human beings, the families behind everything it takes to make that happen.
I would imagine that one of the most exciting parts of this is seeing new technology coming to the table with the development of these projects, new infrastructure, technology, new communication platforms, say among the different avenues in the trucking industry, maritime, for rail, and things like that. It's an exciting time. We're seeing some really incredible growth out there, and I would imagine technology is really going to be leading the way for a lot of this.
It really can. I think the 2020s are going to go down in history as one of the most dynamic decades that U.S. transportation has ever seen. That's everything from drones that are increasingly being used in all kinds of applications in the airspace, commercial space travel, things that sounded so far out not long ago, but also a little closer to home. The safety technology that is increasingly available for cars and trucks, smart connected infrastructure, eventually getting to a scenario where the roads and the equipment on the trucks and cars can talk to each other wirelessly. This is going to have, I think, huge benefits for safety, and it's going to create that many more jobs. Jobs will look a little different over the years. They'll involve having to use this technology in new ways. But in the long run, I think also going to unlock so much economic opportunity around the country. And some of these new technologies, they're new for a lot of consumers, but they're already on the street, and that's where the electric vehicle opportunity is so clear. The technologies exist. The more Americans take advantage of them, the more they're going to be able to save on gas or diesel. And we just got to make sure the country's ready.
All right. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us on the program. And again, that is the Secretary of the Department of Transportation, Pete Buttigieg, joining us on the program. And, sir, thank you very much. Look forward to talking with you again very soon. Thank you for the time.
Same here. Thanks for having me on. Take care.
Outstanding.